let's get one thing straight. If someone can provoke you, they control you. And I'm not talking about physical power. I'm talking about the kind of control that's more dangerous than brute force, psychological control. If someone can trigger an emotional response in you, make you snap, break, cry, scream, they've just hijacked your operating system. You may think you're in control, but the truth is, they just proved they have access to your mind, and you handed it to them. We live in a world where everyone's walking around with emotional tripwires. You say one wrong thing, they explode. You look at them the wrong way, and their day's ruined. People are becoming easier to provoke, easier to offend, easier to manipulate. But here's the catch. It's not because the world is cruel. It's because most people have no internal filter between stimulus and reaction. They never learned the discipline of response. They never took the time to audit who gets emotional access to their mind. So let me ask you, who are you giving access to? Because every time someone makes you angry, every time they bother you and you bite back, they've gotten past your firewall. They've tapped into your emotions like a hacker breaking through a weak password. And when that happens, you lose leverage. You stop thinking, you stop leading, you stop being strategic, you become reactive. And when you're reactive, you're no longer in control, you're being. Think about it. A person insults you in public and your first instinct is to defend your ego. Why? Because you're letting them write the story. They say you're weak, and now you're trying to prove you're strong. They accuse you of being selfish, and suddenly you're bending over backwards to prove you're kind. But the moment you start reacting to their version of you, you abandon your own. You leave yourself. You forget that you're not required to attend every argument you're invited to. That's how control works. It's subtle, it's psychological, and it always starts with emotional access. If they know exactly what to say to make you flinch, you've already lost. Not because you're weak, but because you haven't trained your internal command center. You haven't built the kind of discipline that allows you to pause, breathe, and say, not everything deserves a response. This is not about becoming cold, it's not about suppressing your humanity, it's about becoming selective, intentional, powerful, because real strength is never loud. It's measured, it's composed. It knows that rage is a leash, and silence is a sword. You don't become unbothered by being tougher, you become unbothered by being smarter. You build emotional discipline not by numbing yourself, but by recognizing which battles are worth your energy, and which ones are just distractions dressed as challenges. I've seen the strongest people walk away from provocation without a word, not because they were afraid, but because they had nothing to prove. Their peace was too expensive to sell for a 5-minute ego rush. They didn't react because they weren't triggered. They weren't triggered because they'd already healed. And that's where the real work begins, with yourself. You need to understand what parts of you are still wounded. You need to know what comments cut deep and why. Because until you do, you'll keep handing your triggers to other people like weapons. And the more they realize what gets to you, the more they'll use it, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unconsciously, but always effectively. Until you take your power back. Reclaiming emotional access is not a one-time act, it's a daily discipline. It's learning to observe your own reactions in real time and asking, who's really in control here, me or them? That question alone can stop you from falling into a trap that's been set to make you spiral. And trust me, most traps aren't physical. They're psychological. They come in the form of a smirk, a jab, a sarcastic comment meant to throw you off balance. And every time you stay centered, you're sending one loud, clear message. I don't owe you my emotions. We are not obligated to hand out emotional access like it's candy. We are not required to let every petty person get a rise out of us. Your mind is a fortress. Stop leaving the door wide open for people who don't even deserve to be at the gate. So the next time someone tries to get under your skin, don't fight fire with fire. Fight it with indifference. Fight it with clarity. Fight it by not showing up to the emotional battleground they've set. Because when you do that, when you hold your ground without giving in, without lashing out, you make it crystal clear. You are not controlled. You are not reactive. You are sovereign. When someone can provoke you, they own you. Reclaim your mind and no one can touch you. Let them watch you stay calm. Let them wonder why they no longer have access. that silence, that power, that's the sound of you taking your life back. People confuse emotional detachment with being cold, but that's because most of them have never learned the difference between feeling and drowning. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you choose what to do with your feelings, and that's where the power lies, not in shutting yourself off from the world, but in learning to walk through it without handing over your emotional stability to every trigger it throws at you. See, emotional detachment is not weakness. It's not numbness. It's not indifference. It's wisdom. It's self-preservation. It's what happens when you've seen enough, been through enough, and finally realize that reacting to everything and everyone is a form of slavery. And I don't use that word lightly, because every time you lose yourself in someone else's chaos, you abandon your own clarity. And when you lose clarity, you make decisions that don't serve you. You lose time, you lose peace, you lose power. Let's call it what it really is. Emotional detachment is mastery. It's when you've trained your mind to pause, your heart to breathe, and your soul to speak last. It's that inner voice that tells you, you don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. It's that calm that says, let them be wrong, let them talk, let them spin in their noise. Because you've moved beyond the need to prove yourself in every storm. People who mistake your calm for weakness are usually addicted to chaos. They only understand intensity, drama, and reaction, so when you don't give them what they're used to, they assume you're passive. But the truth is, you're just not available for their circus anymore. You've outgrown the arena. You don't need to roar to prove you're a lion. You just need to stop dancing with clowns. We're taught early on that caring means reacting, that love means pain, that loyalty means suffering, but those are lies passed down through unhealthy models of behavior. Real strength is quiet. Real loyalty is rooted in truth, not tolerance, and real care doesn't mean losing yourself to keep someone else emotionally comfortable. That's not love. That's a trap. Attachment is freedom. It's the space between stimulus and response where your intelligence lives. It's the pause that allows you to ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this mine to carry? Or am I just being pulled into someone else's unresolved storm? And in that pause, you start to rewrite your story. You begin to choose yourself over and over again, not out of selfishness, but out of clarity. I'm telling you right now, some people will never meet the real you because you've had to guard her for so long. You've had to build walls, not because you're afraid, but because experience taught you that not everyone deserves access. And here's what's wild. When you finally learn emotional detachment, those same people will call you distant, cold, unbothered. Let them misunderstand you. Let them sit with their own projections. Because you don't owe anyone an explanation for the boundaries you had to build in order to survive. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself a future where you're not constantly at war with the past. You owe yourself enough detachment to stay rooted in truth, even when everyone around you is spinning lies. You owe yourself the wisdom to walk away from anything that costs you your sanity. And that wisdom? It starts with silence, with stillness, with knowing that your reaction is your responsibility, no matter how loud the world gets. You don't lose anything by being calm. You lose everything by being reactive. You lose time you can't get back, words you can't unsay, energy you'll wish you saved. But when you're detached, when you're measured, you gain something far more valuable, perspective. You start to see the difference between what's urgent and what's important, between what's loud and what's true, between who's worth your time and who's just wasting it. So if you're waiting for permission to stop being emotionally available to everything that drains you, here it is. Stop. Step back. Breathe. You don't need to pick up every call your ego gets. You don't need to respond to every offense. Some things are not personal. Some people are not your people. Some energy was never meant to sit at your table. And the more you practice this level of emotional wisdom, the more people will test it. That's okay. Let them. You're not here to react. You're here to lead yourself, to protect your space, to move with purpose, not panic. And if that looks like detachment, good. That means you're finally becoming unshakable. Because emotional detachment isn't a lack of love. It's the highest form of self-respect. When you stop letting the world hijack your peace, you finally get to meet the version of you that's been buried under reaction for too long. We have to get brutally honest about this one. People don't upset you. You let them. And I know that might sting the first time you hear it, but if you really want to build unshakable strength, emotional maturity, and the kind of peace nobody can steal from you, you need to take this in fully. No one has the power to crawl into your mind, hijack your heart, and twist your emotions unless you open the door and hand them the keys. That's not strength. That's surrender. And the truth is, most people are surrendering without even knowing it. Every time you say they made me angry, what you're really saying is, I gave them control. Every time you snap, rage, cry, or lose your calm because someone pushed your buttons, you're admitting those buttons aren't protected. They're exposed. And that's the problem. Because if someone can poke at your weakness and get a reaction, then that's not their power. That's your lack of boundaries. Think about this. You don't react to everyone the same way. If a stranger rolls their eyes at you on the street, you might shrug it off. But if your partner does it, you're instantly offended. Why? Because you've assigned emotional weight. You've decided who matters enough to hurt you. You've opened yourself up to certain people and said, here's where I'm most fragile. And then when they hit that spot, consciously or unconsciously, you explode. But here's the kicker. It's not what they did. It's what you allowed. I'm not saying people can't be cruel. They can. I'm not saying injustice doesn't happen. It does. But emotional mastery means separating what someone does from what you choose to do with it. And that space in between, that pause where you get to decide, that's where your entire power lives. If you don't own that space, someone else always will. See, some people manipulate to provoke. They test your reactions to measure your limits. They want to know if they can disturb your waters because if they can, they know you're not grounded. They know they can play you like a puppet on strings. But when you stop reacting, when you stand still, calm, composed, they lose their grip. And that's when you win. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who tries to control you is nothing. No response, no explanation, no emotional return, just complete silence. Because silence says, you don't control me. It says, I don't need to prove anything to you. It says, you don't matter enough to move me. And that, more than any angry outburst, is what true strength looks like. We live in a world where reacting is normalized, outrage is currency, drama is attention, but none of that leads to peace. None of that builds resilience. You want to know who you are? Look at what moves you. Look at who you allow to disrupt your energy. And then ask yourself, why? Why does this person hold so much space in my head? Why do their words carry the weight of my self-worth? And if the answer is, I don't know. Good, that's where the real work starts. Because your power doesn't come from being untouchable. It comes from being grounded, centered, steady. A person who's in control of themselves cannot be controlled by anyone else. And the only way to get there is to stop outsourcing your emotions. You have to learn how to stay present, how to sit with discomfort, how to respond with purpose instead of reacting out of pain. So the next time someone pushes your buttons, stop, breathe, don't respond right away, don't rush to defend yourself, don't collapse into anger. Just ask yourself, what are they trying to take from me right now, and do I really want to give it to them? 9 times out of 10, they're trying to take your peace. They want you flustered. They want you loud. They want to see if you'll fall out of character. Don't give them that win. Because the moment you realize you control your own emotional thermostat, you stop letting other people play with the dial. You start regulating yourself. You start leading your own reactions instead of letting them lead you. And in that process, you become dangerous in the best way possible. Not because you lash out, but because you don't need to. So when someone says something insulting, condescending, manipulative, pause. You don't owe them a single second of your chaos. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. No one should get the privilege of watching you lose yourself. Not unless you hand them that privilege. And if you're handing it out freely, you're not guarding your crown the way you should. People will try to upset you. That's life. But they can't unless you let them. And when you stop letting them, you stop being controlled. That's when you truly become unshakable. We've been sold a lie about anger. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that anger equals strength, that being loud, explosive, or intimidating means you're powerful. But here's the reality. Anger is not power. Anger is noise. It's a reaction, not a decision. And the ones who live in reaction mode, they're not in control. They're being controlled. You ever watch someone lose their temper in public? Watch closely. In that moment, do they look powerful or do they look exposed? Because what's really happening is a leak, emotional leakage. Their inability to self-regulate spills all over the place. Their lack of inner discipline becomes everyone else's problem. That's not strength, that's chaos. We confuse volume with authority. We confuse rage with dominance. But anyone can get angry, that's the easy part. Animals can get angry, toddlers throw tantrums when they don't get their way. What separates you from everyone else is not your ability to explode. It's your ability to remain unshaken, to feel everything and still choose stillness. That is power. See, real composure is not about being passive. It's not about being numb or emotionless. It's about being precise. It's about knowing when to speak, when to walk away, when to fight, and when not to. The person who masters that is dangerous in the most calculated way. Because they don't waste energy, they don't get baited, they don't leak. They observe, they analyze, and they strike only if necessary. Everyone else is swinging wildly. They're just watching, waiting, conserving. That's strength. That's discipline. Let me tell you something. The people who scream the loudest often have the least control. They want to look like they're in charge, but their emotions are driving the car. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a coworker disrespects you in front of others, when someone betrays you, your brain fires up, your blood pressure rises, your ego screams, react. But if you give in, if you snap, you hand over your power. You've just proven to the world that they own you, your state of mind, your mood, your behavior. Now imagine this instead. Imagine someone tries to provoke you and you just stare. You're calm. You're composed, you're unbothered. You don't match their energy, you stay rooted in yours. You don't need to yell, you don't need to defend, you don't even need to respond. That silence, that lack of reaction, it speaks louder than anything. It says, I'm in control, and you don't matter enough to pull me out of it. And this isn't just philosophy, this is neuroscience. When you're angry, the amygdala, your brain's fear center, takes over. It hijacks logic, impulse control, decision-making. You say things you don't mean, you do things you regret. But when you train yourself to pause, to breathe, to regulate before reacting, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes decisions. That calculates consequences, that protects your future. So if you really want to be powerful, don't train your reaction, train your restraint. Learn to delay your response by 2 seconds. Those 2 seconds could save your job, your relationship, your reputation, your peace. They are the difference between a regret and a reset, between a breakdown and a breakthrough. And let's talk about relationships for a moment. Romantic, professional, personal, every connection you have will test your composure. People will come at you sideways. They will project, provoke, manipulate. Some will try to gaslight you, bait you into a reaction, get you to raise your voice so they can play the victim. Don't give them that. When you stay composed, they lose control. When you stay composed, you gain the upper hand. When you stay composed, you become untouchable. So the next time you feel that fire rising, ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Or is this just another test to see if I've mastered myself? Because that's the real game. It's not about winning the argument, it's not about proving your point. It's about winning your peace. And peace only belongs to the person who can hold the line inside their own mind. Anger is not leadership. Anger is not control. Anger is not strength. It's a shortcut. It's the illusion of power. But composure? That's earned. That's trained. That's owned by the few who've learned that real dominance begins with discipline. So if you want to rise above the noise, if you want to lead, if you want to be respected and remembered, don't yell. Don't explode. Stay steady. Be the calm force in the middle of the storm. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more loud people. It needs more grounded ones. Ones who move with intention, not impulse. Ones who understand that the strongest weapon you will ever wield is not your voice, but your silence. There's one thing people underestimate more than anything else in a high-stakes world: emotional control. And it's not just about keeping your cool to look mature. Emotional control is leverage. It's the hidden edge most people never develop. Because while the rest of the world reacts, explodes, cries out, defends and attacks, you pause. You observe. You process. You strike only if it's worth it. And that pause, that space between stimulus and response, that is where your power lives. In any setting. Relationships, business, negotiation, confrontation. Whoever maintains emotional control controls the direction. Think about it. The person who stays grounded makes the decisions. The one who stays regulated navigates the chaos. The moment you lose your emotional grip, you hand your power to someone else. They now dictate your behavior, your choices, your energy. That's not strategy. That's surrender. The reason most people fail in critical moments isn't because they're not smart. It's because they're not emotionally prepared. Their inner environment is reactive, so the second they feel disrespected, they lash out. The second they're triggered, they collapse, and guess what? The people who know how to manipulate emotions, narcissists, power seekers, they count on this. They bait you, provoke you, push your buttons. They want the outburst. Because once you snap, they know you're not thinking anymore. You're bleeding. But when you don't take the bait, when you can feel the surge of emotion and still choose to remain unmoved, that's when the game changes. Because now, you're not just reacting, you're leading. You're directing the energy in the room. And most people have never been taught how to do this. Most people don't even know it's possible. They think emotional control means bottling things up. It doesn't. It means processing emotions with precision. It means recognizing this person wants a rise out of me, and I'm not giving it to them. Let's go deeper. From a psychological standpoint, emotional control is executive function. It's your prefrontal cortex doing its job. When it's working, you can weigh consequences, calculate responses, choose long-term outcomes over short-term satisfaction. But when emotion takes the wheel, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. Now you're all impulse. Now you say things you regret. Now your entire image, your leverage, your boundaries, all of it gets tossed because you didn't train for that moment. And this isn't about being cold. This isn't about denying your emotions. It's about understanding how to manage them with discipline and accuracy. People think strength is shouting louder, but real strength is measured in how long you can sit in discomfort without letting it own you. It's in how you respond to disrespect without letting it drag you down into chaos. You don't meet rage with rage, you meet it with presence, stillness, calculation, because the one who's still thinking is the one who still has the upper hand. Let's say you're in an argument. The other person starts yelling, accusing, throwing things that hit below the belt. They want you to react. They want to suck you into the emotional spiral. The average person? They jump in. Now you've got two fires burning and nothing gets solved. But the person with emotional control? They don't engage. They might speak, they might respond, but it's deliberate. It's slow. It's strategic, and even if they choose to walk away, they're not running, they're choosing to disengage with power. Now that's a whole different posture. Walking away doesn't mean weakness when it's intentional. It means, I see exactly what this is and I won't let you drag me into your storm. That's not retreat, that's redirection. That's what emotional mastery looks like in real life. The people who know this walk into rooms differently. They command energy without saying a word, because everyone senses it. This person can't be shaken. And let me make this very clear. If you want to build a life that's unbreakable, whether that's in leadership, love, or legacy, you must own your inner state. That's not a luxury. That's a requirement. Because the world will test you. People will test you. Life will throw fire at you and see if you melt or hold your shape. And if you haven't trained for that, you will break when the pressure hits. So start seeing your emotional control not as something soft, but as something surgical. It's not suppression, it's strategy. The strongest people don't lose their minds when it gets loud. They stay quiet and pull strings. They hold their posture while everyone else unravels. That's what gives them the upper hand. Because in the end, control is not about what happens around you. It's about what you choose to do with it. And when you can hold your center, no matter what's thrown at you, you become unstoppable.